Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Coach McVay Show, presented by Microsoft Surface. I'm JB, along with my friend D'Marco Farr, and the general manager of your Los Angeles Rams, Les Snead, is with us on a short week. Week 11 takes the Rams back to New England to take on the Patriots. All right, let's start with reflections on last night's loss to Miami. It's been 3 really good steps forward for the Rams, and now this 1 step back.
That says it all. Good thing it's a short week. Go to New England. It's fall. Play some football, get the bad taste out of our mouth. That's the only thing we can do.
What's the streak with Les now on the show? Is he?
It ended abruptly.
It ended?
Night.
Okay, so we're going to get a new streak started going to New England. And that's all you can do is circle the wagons and get right back at it.
That's yes, they're not calling it off. It's the next round. And really, from a macro standpoint, last night's very disappointing.
Yeah.
Not what we planned for, not what we envisioned. Now, there were some good things last night. It was a little opposite. It was a little more – let's call it like it is. The defense played feisty. Special teams was good. We had plenty of opportunities on offense and didn't take advantage of them.
To what extent does last year Les provide maybe an emotional backstop or maybe a blueprint to what might be possible in the second half of this season?
I mean, I think every year is different, but that's something let's call it, that's an experience that not everyone in our locker room can draw upon. But I think whether it's the second half of the season, whether it's November, December football, whether it's just the next round, there is an element of everything that's been done before or all the results that's accumulated before this next week, that's over and done with. There's lessons to be learned, and then can we go apply them into the second half? And really it gets down to this from a macro standpoint, psychologically, right? It's what the NFL, the 17 rounds that we go through, it's over about 5 or 6 months. And there's going to be ebbs and flows. And the whole key is through all those ebbs and flows is staying steady, not letting, let's call it a yesterday's win, actually, right, get us fat and happy and affect this week's preparation, or a yesterday's loss, right, bleed into next week. And that's really some version of ironclad emotional and control to truly get through this marathon.
I think I heard Jared Verse say the same thing. You can't get too highs with the highs and too lows with the lows. You got to go back to work. It's a short week. It's better. But about him, when you drafted him, talked to him about before you drafted him, did you sense that certain maturity about him? I know he jumps off the tape on video, but when you talk to him, there's like an old soul. Like you've been in this league already 10 years. How do you get that from day one?
Hey, you know, there's probably many variables, right, that come into play in that. Whether it's just mom, dad, God-given genetics, sociology, right, how he was mentored, how he behaves, how he's matured based on his age. End of the day, I do know this: if you probably look back over the course of his college career and into now, like most of the things, right, let's call it the actions he goes through on a day-to-day basis leads to, right, quality, right, football that's tenacious, that's urgent, that is actually contagious. And that's really been consistently who he's been since we've started watching, even when you go back to Albany film.
I mean, even with Aaron, it was immediate, but I've never seen a rookie kind of pace the defense, pace the team like he's done. Like he's been here for years and he just got here.
Yeah, I think D'Marco, let's go back to when you were in locker rooms and let's call it young players that you saw come into the league. Some of them aren't there yet. Some of them are closer to being there yet for many reasons. He's someone that probably, right, let's just call it, he's not a finished product, but he was, right, closer to there than needing to be, let's call it, developed.
We all think Kobie Turner should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year last season. How validating would it be to see Jared get that honor for the organization this year in 2024?
From an individual standpoint, and it's interesting, the emotions that come through after a night like last night were collectively, right, we weren't up to the standards we set out to be. Sometimes it's tough to talk about individual accolades, but anytime a rookie can come in and again, he's not there yet. I mean, we're halfway through this thing. So I would say, right, I'm well aware he probably won a lot of defensive rookie of the, let's call it rookie of the years, but that's the midway point. And what all of our rookies are about to grasp is, it's a long season. As the college season winds down, right, we're just now, right, getting into the halfway point. So it's a tough marathon, and they're about to go through it. But again, yes, if he continues playing like he has, that will be something he's definitely earned.
The whole front, include Michael Hoyt. But I think the funny thing is, I never thought we'd be talking about a young defense as much as we are. I guess that leads into kind of the disappointment part of last night, that you couldn't find a way to score points to help win that game. And the defense they kept you in the game long enough.
Kept us in the game, and probably maybe even, let's call it kept us in the game a little longer than let's call it probably expected in terms of the way the game was going. If you get in the EPAs and some of that analytics, so give them credit. That's the neat thing is what we're seeing occur and evolve is, as we said, as one of the themes coming into the season. How do you replace Aaron Donald? No way you can replace Aaron Donald with one person. But what we are starting to feel is the collective is doing their part in trying to replace Aaron Donald and some of the havoc he did cause.
Speaking of the GOAT, I saw you two had a moment pregame. What was that like seeing him back in the Rams house?
You know, it was really cool. The really, I would call it, the thing I remember most about last night is seeing that, right, you could just feel that he gave it his all, and there's not necessarily a regret. And that's the only, D'Marco, you can talk about it, right? When the cliff is here and your football career is over, there's probably a subset of, probably more than most, where, wow, that ended a little quicker or sooner than later. And there's probably that void that's tough to fill, a little bit of regret, a little bit, boy, I wish it could have gone a little bit farther. You can tell the neat thing with him is there's an element of that part of his life is fulfilled, and he's on to the next chapter full speed.
I think the entire audience was hoping you would tell a completely different story than the one you just did. Though we're very happy for Aaron and his loved one, his family.
He did say he was enjoying, seeing the gentleman we were just talking about, that defensive front, that entire defense play football. So there's probably a little bit of a jealous side, like, oh, it'd be neat to play with that bunch, but.
Well, to that point, if you can put like your salary cap hat on, because for the last, say, generation of football, we talked about how the cheat code of the salary cap is having a quarterback who can win you a title on a rookie contract. When I think about the rest of this year and moving forward for the Rams.
Or cheat code could be a quarterback that can become a 6 eligible and extend plays. And
well, there you go.
Defenses are designed to cover this thing for 3 seconds, and next thing you know, they're at 6 seconds going, oh, geez. But I didn't mean that.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, but both of them work. I would take number 2 over 1.
But where I was going with that is, given the price of edge defenders and interior defensive linemen now, to have a group of 4 of them on rookie contracts, how meaningful can that be to roster construction for your Rams moving forward?
Really, really good question. Probably haven't thought about it until this moment, because what really the main thing that started let's call it the draft before this draft, but over the last 2 drafts, has been to intentionally try to begin infusing young, disruptive talent amongst that defensive front. So here's what I'll say: it's right now, it is fulfilling to see that some of what we envision is actually coming to life. And then at that point, we can, as we get into the rest of the season, into the offseason, going, okay, how can we, as you said, use that as an edge to maybe gain an edge on, somewhere else on the roster for seasons moving forward.
And I know he's been here for a while, but I thought Bobby Brown has really picked up his level of play. We've said his name a lot in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, going back to not just Jared, the contagiousness of how that defense plays. There's an element, right, of we see it from the opening game and even the second game when Arizona put up a lot of points. But even in that game, take the loss out of it, you could feel our team disrupting Kyler Murray. Now, maybe they have not ever, as a collective, wow, that's a fast guy to try to corral. And if you do not corral him and give him those, all of a sudden that 3-second play turns into it seems like in one of those plays in that game, it may have been about 9 seconds where, wow, what a play at the back of the end zone. Point being is, even in that game, you could feel them coming along, and then you could just feel the contagiousness spread amongst all the defenders, Bobby Brown included, where, hey, we all want, it seems like they all want to be a part of the collective that's disrupting and each one of them are fueling each other. It's just a neat, and that's not anything that's said in a huddle.
Yeah.
That's not maybe a locker room speech. That is an interesting, let's call it chemistry, some version of physical energy that somehow evolves over the course of a season, and it's cool to see.
I would want to give that to Chris Shula, that he's brought that sort of energy, that sort of togetherness to the defense. I hope it is. Yeah.
And the neat thing about Chris is let's call it being in the chair for the first time, having the, let's call it the courage to put his fingerprints on it, and also go, maybe my fingerprints, maybe my DNA is doing this, but we actually have a skill set that does this. Maybe we should tilt toward that. And you're seeing us play maybe a different style of defense, right, based on who we have and what we're trying to become. So that's always, again, when you take this thing and break it down in the silos on a game like last night where collectively we lost that game, that's a loss for the Rams. We're under 500 now, but there were also individuals who are maximizing their ops.
I got one more individual for you that I want to ask about, and that's Darious Williams. I think the inflection point to this turnaround defensively coincides perfectly when he came off of injured reserve, right? So when you're evaluating a 31-year-old corner, your background with Darious and the film he put out as recently as last year in Jacksonville, what made you feel good about bringing him back to LA?
It's interesting. You mentioned 31. There's subjectively, you can watch the film and go, wow, he does not necessarily look like a 31-year-old corner. And I say that in sometimes a 31-year-old corner starts to look more like a safety. Why am I saying that? Maybe doesn't move as well. So interesting, right? The genetics, his physical makeup, his pathology, and that he still plays and moves like a younger corner. But with that being said, you can also notice that he is 31, and maybe he is his experience is more like a safety. So it just makes you, let's call it a wiser corner. So that was one of the reasons we were able, we wanted to bring him back.
Hell of a tackler. How do you resist the urge, I guess, when it doesn't work out for you on either side of the ball? And I'm glad you said that. You win and lose as a team, but you start to separate offense, defense, special teams. But how do you resist the urge to say, let's change everything if it doesn't work, versus let's stay with the plan and get better moving into next week?
I think at a macro level, higher level, we know we're not going to all of a sudden, we're not coming out next week and running the option per se. That's a drastic, but that gives the example. You can't really just change who you are. Now what and there's so many variables going on offense. I always go, they're not excuses, they're reasons. And at the end of the day, how do you use those reasons to take it one step at a time and just try to do our best, right? For who we are, who we have back, how cohesive we are, those type of things, to score more points than New England in this case. So it's not necessarily, obviously we're not playing like we have played before on offense or how we envision playing. Still doesn't mean we can't just score one more point than the opponent, and that's what you're trying to do in terms of the micro of the changes you're going to make. But you can't change a lot.
Cohesiveness, continuity, those seem to be the buzzwords right now. And I get it, because Sunday could be the first day, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can start the 5 offensive linemen you thought you were going to start week 1 in Detroit when you broke camp. Am I wrong?
That is true. And the toughest thing we're going through now is we get these guys back based on where we are in the season, the amount of padded practices we can have. There is not a lot of time, right, to engineer continuity on the practice field in terms of playing together, playing against, right, the speed of a defense, an NFL defense that's not, it's not week 1, it's not week 2. It's these defenses have now evolved to week 8, 9, and 10 into the league. So that it is a conundrum that we're going to have moving forward. We felt it a little bit last night is, okay, you're getting, let's call it what we would envision day one, first print flip card starters back, but they haven't been practicing football.
Yeah.
They've been in the training room, and the offensive line, in terms of a group that's really got to play collectively, each position group's got to play, the back end's got to play collectively, things like that. Offensive line might be number one in terms of importance of cohesion and collectiveness. But there's a lot of units that have to play together. But if we were going to weigh them, offensive line would be up there. Hard part about this part of the schedule is training camp's over. There's no preseason games. There's no practices with other opponents. We're playing games that count, and they're keeping score, and they're in the standings.
And you can't really jumpstart it. You just have to take the reps and take the steps.
We got to figure that out.
Yeah.
But you got 9 bodies in that room with starting experience now. There's probably a lot of GMs in the league that would gladly trade problems with you.
It was interesting. Line. We talked about it. The nice thing, what makes it a conundrum is, if, as an example, we started 1-4, we won 3 straight. If we hadn't won 3 straight, it wouldn't have been a conundrum, right? What we always envisioned and wanted was, okay, when everyone gets back, if it's a conundrum, that means, wow, we're playing relatively solid over here, but we're now getting these players back. How do you implement them and keep, let's call it, the momentum going, right? That's the conundrum we're wanted, and here we are. Might have taken a step back a little bit last night based on trying to, figure out that algorithm.
It's Tuesday, so Monday just happened, and we were just talking. The season's not dead. You still have opportunities.
It's interesting. We're really, at halftime of that game the other night, we were halfway through the season. So, really the season's just getting started. Probably in your day, some of the legends who's coached our game, and probably should take the moment to, as a lot of people have, recognized John Robinson. But some of those legends, probably John included, said some of your most important football is going to be played in November and December. So here we are. So yes, the season's far from over.
Do you allow the standings to color your thinking, in this case, to keep you optimistic about the fact that the division's right there, Arizona leading at 6-4?
Here's the neat thing where we're at now is we're fortunate that the division, no one, let's call it, took a big lead. Now I think our paradigm is, okay, you can't – we're fortunate, but at the end of the day, you can't just rely on the division coming back to you per se. So now it's a little bit in our hands. I think all of us in the NFC West, right? It's within striking distance for all of us, and we'll see who goes and grabs it. You know what I mean? And not necessarily who falls back. So
it's all about, like you said, getting better incrementally. And it's so nice to talk about football without people that are saying that you should fire a head coach because he kicked the field goal on 3rd down. You know what I'm saying? You're doing
what people are you talking to, D'Marco?
Just people on the radio. It's just funny, but you're doing everything you can to win a football game. I mean, it's tough.
That does seem like an overreaction. I could understand someone saying, "Hey, mate, why did you call that?" But I mean, you can tell the listener.
Those are the waters.
Slightly overreaction.
Weekday
just
mornings.
Saying, they even brought up like the old Super Bowl stuff. I'm like, you forgot the one he won in L.A. I'm just saying. I mean, you could talk to him for me. Maybe they'll listen to you.
Now, you know what? I do think probably your show, it allows, like all of us, we need to vent. Everyone's frustrated about last night. So there's you're providing our passionate fans an outlet.
Yes. So and I'm happy to do
I don't mind saying that may be a bit of an overreaction. Not certain that I could change that person's. I would even bet the under that I could change that person's mind, and probably wouldn't try to.
Anyone looking to sell shares in McVay, Stafford, Kupp, Nakua, Kyron, offensive line the way it's currently constituted, you let me know.
I'll buy.
I've got some
right there.
Some liquidity burning a hole in my pocket. I would like to sign up for that.
Thank you.
Les, what's going on in the draft calendar, kind of away from the facility as we hit the holidays here? You mentioned the college season winding down in your neck of the woods. You prepare for.
It's getting crunch time. A lot of college games have been played the way we structured as kind of our top tier group. We still probably have a couple of positions to evaluate in terms of our initial fall evaluations and meetings. I do feel. Let's call it sorry for the position we're going to do this week, because we're going to probably grade that or evaluate that position group like that fan evaluated.
When you're not in the
game.
best mood?
Yeah, appointment, yes.
Okay.
And we actually do some surveys on where's our mood at, so that how come we actually, let's just say, usually we try to take the top 15 to 20 players during the week of the position group, right? And there's some surveys to go, okay, what kind of mood were we in? Because it's like, wow, we took this position group, and boy, we did not like any of them. And maybe it was coming off a tough loss and things like that. So, but that's a little bit where we're at now, which is always a fun place to be as you see the entirety of the board begin to set itself, especially in some of those early portions, and you still have some of the let's call it the later day 2, 3 portions to come. But then it's who stays, who doesn't, and then it's also going back, reviewing, refining, and then there's our area scouts are going to provide us some players here that, let's call it, weren't necessarily in the top 10 to 20 before the season started, but have earned that with their play this fall and over the next, I think that's usually in December, we start circling back to some of the guys who rose into that portion of the draft for us. So it's always a fun part. But I'm glad you asked, because I've been jokingly saying, wow, I feel sorry for this position group this week. I won't name that position group that we're on, but I do.
Once we're done here,
I do think we're going to be a little hard on that group.
Part of the reason I ask is I had a chance to sit with Omar Speights today. And if you were to rewind time, he's kind of in the middle of his LSU season this time last year, playing with an eventual Heisman winner. And I wonder how valuable it can be to organization building when you find maybe a future starter in those post-draft hours like he might be for your team.
Wow, goes back to what you mentioned with a little bit the edge with it's called a rookie DL or a rookie QB. It's an extra draft pick. It's a bonus when someone like that earns a starting job and actually becomes a little bit of a long-term starter. And even if they earn a role, right, as a contributor. So it's always an extra draft pick that you weren't necessarily expecting for. But what I like to say is every team, not just us, is intentionally trying to identify players after the draft that can help us based on, because it happens every year, and especially with the element of the COVID and the 6-year eligibilities and some of the let's call it, if we call it NIL now, with players staying longer because they may get paid. There is an element where there's been let's call it a flux, or maybe a little more players that are draft eligible, right, over this subset of years. He's probably one of them, right, being able to transfer from the Pac-12 to the SEC and things like that. So
I did get a question, not from a listener. This was from a football fan. Omar Speights starting. Was that a speed thing because of how fast Miami is and how they run their offense, or did he earn that spot? I said I think he might have earned that spot.
Well, he did. He earned the spot when Troy
earned the start.
When Troy went down with his hamstring injury, he was definitely going to be one of the second linebackers to Roseboom in certain packages. Last week, he would have played a lot more. I know our defense was expecting Seattle to do a little more 2 tight end offense. They went a little more 11, so he didn't play as much. This week, because of that, they probably trained him in 11 and 12 and 21 and things like that in base. So, again, we'll probably, moving forward, when there's one linebacker on the field, it'll still be Christian Roseboom, and then when there's 2, there's him. What he did show in the preseason, dating back to probably Oregon State, LSU, 2 things: range, side to side, but also he doesn't mind, right? When he goes and arrives, there's an element of thump and feel and knockback in his game.
I think he led in tackles, right? Off the top. I believe he was the leader in tackles. Yeah. So that's
it's interesting. Yeah. I remember, if we go back to LMU, you go to your first practice, all of that, first in pads, and it's what we determine what our developmental period, right after practice, right? The first 1s and 2s, they're done, and all of a sudden over here on this field, let's call it our 3s, are actually doing live scrimmage tackle, bring people down to the ground. Usually only about 5 or 6 plays, maybe 8 plays. But I remember watching our first developmental period practice, whatever we call it, at LMU. And there was Omar being Omar. And like, wow, he is. Because remember, when you practice, you're not tackling. All of a sudden you go to tackling, and then you go to tackling and someone arriving kind of with an attitude when they tackle. You notice that.
That kickoff in preseason.
Oh, yeah,
the Chargers win too.
Yeah.
That undrafted free agent running next to him, Christian Roseman, last night wasn't bad either, wasn't he?
Yes.
Could have had 2.
Had the hair flowing. Yeah.
D'Marco buys me a drink every time I mention a college free agent, by the way.
You dang right.
That's
yes, sir.
That's our lifelong agreement. Anything else?
No, just moving on to next week. And like you said, I'm glad that you said that and put it out there in the universe that this is a team thing. You win and lose as a team, because you know what happens when you lose a game. They were great. They were bad. That's the reason, yada, yada. And that's the last thing you want mid-season or any time in the season. I think that's fair to say.
Fair to say. And again, it's a team thing. Last night, the defense did their part in keeping us in it, and we were close. Right, and I'm not. If we could have come back and won the game, I'm not saying that the world would have said, "Okay, you from start to finish." Wow, I hate to say it, you deserve that game. Now it'd have been a win. Neat thing about team sports is, right, if in a game there's an element of lopsidedness, defense playing better than offense, the defense keeps you in it and keeps you within. Even when they got 11, I was thinking, hey, you know what? It might take 2 straight touchdown drives and you win by 3 points or 1, and it's a walk-off kind of win. Might not have, let's call it, deserved it from start to finish, but because of it is a team sport, one side of the ball can keep you in it most of the game, and the other side can, right, have 1 or 2 good series, and there's your W. Doesn't mean, I can say this, as Nick Saban would say, doubt the defense is going to listen to this show. But if you listen to this show and you think you've arrived, that can be rat poison, and you know what, next thing, so it's, but you got to call a spade. And
great point. Yeah.
Keep winning 3 out of 4, and I think this thing will end the way that we all hope it will. Les Snead, D'Marco Farr, JB Long, thank you for being with us tonight for the Coach McVay Show with our special guest, as always, presented by Microsoft Surface.